Thank you. Mr. Zunino?
Thank you, Your Honor. And Mr. Gloria, just a few questions. You mentioned that you had tested the Agilis machine. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
When did you first start running the tests on the machine?
We ran tests prior to the primary, and we again did that prior to the general election by providing data to the vendor who was able to produce return envelopes with signatures from our file.
Now, when you run the tests, do you after you run the test, do you go in and manually observe or review the signatures to determine whether they look like they're matches?
That is correct. Our staff runs through those envelopes, and then based on the acceptance of signatures that come from the test data, we use that to make a determination on the setting.
During testing, did your staffers flag signatures that didn't appear to match?
The signatures that were in the database came directly from our history of signatures. So what they were looking for is a point where the system was only taking everything that was an obvious match at a high number to make that setting.
And that's the setting of 40 that you've decided upon?
That is correct.
Is that the setting that you used for the primary election?
I believe that was the setting that we used in the primary election.
And have you changed the setting at all since the early voting started, or since you started counting mail ballots?
No, it has been consistent.
Okay, that's all I had, Joe. Thank you.
Mr. Devaney?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Gloria. I just have a few questions for you. I just wanted to ask a few questions about your background. How long have you worked on elections in your professional career?
I've been working in elections since 1992 and as the registrar of voters since 2013.
And in your career working on elections, have you worked as a voting machine technician?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And when did you work in that role?
I worked in the beginning from 1992 through the end of the middle of 2013 when I was promoted at different levels as a supervisor in the end prior to my promotion to registrar.
Could you briefly describe what your responsibilities were as a voting machine technician?
Initially, as a technician, my responsibility was to maintain the system, make actual repairs, track it, also to prepare voting machines for use for early voting and election day. And as I progressed through that position, I became a supervisor where I began to run the logistics of setting up for early voting programs and also making sure that machines made it out for election day, that the proper number of equipment was assigned. And then ultimately as a supervisor in the area where I managed the budget, assisted in making policy decisions, and then I was promoted to registrar of voters.
You mentioned in response to an earlier question that the Agilis machine was used in the June primary. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Were there poll observers there for the primary? Do you know?
Not in the primary.
Okay. And Mr. Gloria, do you provide any signature match training for your staff?
Yes, we do. We have a professional who's formerly with the FBI to come in and provide forensic training to our permanent staff, who then take that training and pass it on to the staff that we hire to verify signatures.
And when did that training last occur, Mr. Gloria?
That was in, I believe, the first part of August that we had that done, and we do it every year, normally in July, but we were pressed for time this year and had to do it in the first week of August.
And Mr. Gloria, there have been questions about whether challenges are permitted for mail ballots. if challenges were permitted on site for mail ballots, how would that affect your office's ability to process ballots?
Well, there have been no challenges submitted in the mail process, but the process does exist. Depending on the number of challenges that were made, it could very well slow down our process for getting ballots to the counting board and ultimately to be tabulated.
And if the Agilis machine were removed in response to the petitioner's request in this case, how would that affect the time required to process the mail ballots that your office has received so far this year?
At this point, I don't think that we would meet the canvas deadline if we were unable to use the Agilis machine to sort and also for the ASR, the signature match.
And do you have any understanding of what the volume of mail ballots is this year as compared to, for example, 2016, the last presidential election in Clark County?
In 2016, we had a mail ballot turnout of about 5% or just under. So the number of mail ballots that we sent is a tremendous increase. We sent out over 1.2 million ballots. And at this point, we're very near to receiving 300,000 ballots in, which is at least 230,000 more than we received in the 2016 election.
And my last questions for you are, so far you have a signature rejection rate for the ballots that have been processed. How does that rejection rate for this election compare, if you know, to the rejection rates in 2018 and 2016?
I do not have that information, sir. I can't accurately answer that question.
Okay. Thank you for your time. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Binnall, redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Gloria, on direct examination, you testified that I believe that nobody had, I should say on examination from your counsel, that there hadn't been a complaint about using the Agilis machine. Is that right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. You didn't actually submit a plan for observation purposes to the county until just 1 week ago, correct?
It was done on October 20th.
Okay, so that was, I think, a week ago yesterday?
I believe so.
And that plan was due April 15th, right?
I believe it was done late. I believe that you're correct. The first one was due on April 15th.
Okay. So as to your testimony regarding the sequential order of the way that the ballots are handled by the counting board officials, the counting board officials, you said that they are not required to place them in sequential order. Is that right?
That is correct.
But they are instructed to match the ballot to the envelope if it's going to be rejected because somebody put their name or signed their ballot, correct?
If they're able.
If they're able. And it's also true that the only way they would be able to is if they were in sequential order, correct?
I can't answer that question. That would probably be something that needed to be answered by a supervisor out there, how they would make that determination.
Well, let me ask you this then. You certainly don't prohibit them from putting them in sequential order, do you?
No, sir.
Okay. You talked about the video cameras that the Republican Party offered to provide to you in order to give meaningful observation. You remember testifying as to that?
Yes.
And you said that the people wanted people there in order to service those cameras. Is that right?
Repeat that. I didn't hear it completely.
Testified that the party wanted to have people there with the cameras, correct?
Correct.
In fact, what they were offering was to give free technical support so that the cameras could function, correct?
They said that they would need somebody there to man the camera. I don't know anything about whether they were providing free technical support.
Well, they certainly didn't say they wanted people there all the time with the cameras, correct?
Yes, they did. They made it very clear that somebody would be there with the camera all the time.
Well, okay. And who told you that?
That was in a conversation that we had, I believe, with Jesse Law.
Okay.
Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, did Mr. Law tell you that he was open to being flexible to find some way to have cameras allowing for meaningful observation?
I do remember him making that exact statement, but he did clear that they would man the cameras, that they would pay for them, and that they wanted them in all of the observation areas.
You said that there is a challenge process for observers to give a challenge to an ambassador. Is that right?
The challenge process exists. If somebody were to challenge you, it would be by communicating with the ambassador.
How exactly would a observer go about making a challenge to an ambassador?
Well, when that occurs, if it occurs, they would need to let the ambassador know, and then the assistant registrar and registrar would be involved with carrying through on the process.
So they would orally let the ambassador know of the challenge, and then it would make its way up the chain?
Yes, sir.
And have you trained your staff on that?
Registration staff, supervisors are completely aware of the challenge process.
Have you instructed that ambassadors be trained on to pass challenges up the chain of command?
We've instructed ambassadors to bring any questions or any issues to the registrar, assistant registrar, or supervisor.
And that hasn't happened, is that right?
For a challenge,
Yes.
not that I know of.
Okay. And you actually are the final step on that chain, correct?
I am the registrar.
Okay. You said that if you weren't able to use the Agilis for signature matching, you wouldn't be able to meet your deadline?
That could very possibly be true, yes.
But you can't say for certain, can you?
I'm fairly certain that we would not be able to finish at this time late in the session. We're getting ready to close out early voting and begin prep for election day. We do not have time to recruit additional staff to increase our manual signature check process.
The Agilis machine is only matching 30% of ballots, correct?
Which is a large number when you look at the number of ballots that we're receiving.
Do you agree that accuracy is the most important thing in a presidential election?
Integrity, I would say, is the most important thing in an election, but accuracy is certainly one of those.
Sir, when did you hire the ambassadors?
I don't have that date, I'm sorry. It was prior to the actual, the ballots, I know, so it probably would have been the week. I don't have that date on. It was before we started reading ballots, I know that.
Okay, were they all recently hired?
Yes,
And are they all temporary employees?
yes.
Okay. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gloria. Mr. Binnall, your next witness.
Katharyne, Your Honor.
Will you please raise your right hand and be sworn?
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now coming before this court, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Good morning, ma'am. Can you please state your name for the record, and please spell, in your case, I'm going to ask you to spell both your first and last name.
Katharyne Taylor. First name spelled Katharyne. Last name Taylor, Taylor.
And Ms. Taylor, what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm retired primarily. I'm an interpretive guide for Big Jeep Tours, but previously I am an attorney licensed in the state of California, and I was a deputy DA in Los Angeles County.
Okay, and how long were you a deputy district attorney in Los Angeles County?
I was with that office 8 years.
Okay, where do you live now?
Las Vegas, Nevada.
All right. Ma'am, have you been an observer at the Greystone facility?
I have.
And how often have you been an observer at the Greystone facility?
For 3 evenings.
Okay. Your Honor, for the record.
Sorry. Please repeat your answer.
For 3 evenings, Your Honor.
3
Evenings. 4
evenings.
hours.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm handing you Exhibit 1, which is already in evidence. Can you please just take a moment and look at those photographs?
I should tell you I have not been at the trade facility as of yet.
I understand, ma'am. You're going to see a tab that is, a page says ballot inspection and duplication areas. Let me know when you get to that page.
All right.
Okay. After you get to that page, the next several pictures, can you review those and let me know whether those are pictures of the Greystone facility?
Yes.
Okay. And there's an area with, on the third picture there, where there are 3 chairs surrounded by red tape in a rectangle. Do you see that?
Yes,
Is that the observer station?
it is.
Okay, and when you observe at Greystone, is that where you sit?
It is.
When you have observed at Greystone, do you see that the counting board members who are separating ballots?
Yes.
Okay, have you ever seen them take ballots out of boxes?
Yes, I have.
And do they always then keep watching those ballots after they take them out of the boxes?
Yes.
Are they ever left unattended?
Yes.
When have you seen them left unattended?
At 5:30 on October 26th, which was Monday evening, we took a break. It was a 15-minute break, and the table that was directly to my north, which was to my right, had ballots that were taken out, left on the table. We were led out of the room. The observers were led out of the room by the ambassadors, but those ballots were left on the table unattended.
At that point, they were out of their envelope, is that right?
That's correct.
Have you also observed the process of what happens when the counting board members need to have a ballot duplicated?
I have,
Can you describe that process for us?
yes.
Go ahead.
When the counting board has a duplication that needs to take place, they place the ballot to the side of the table where they're facing each other. They raise their hand, and at that point, a runner comes to them, picks up that ballot, places it in a green folder. That green folder then, I have observed, do many things. One, I've observed the green folder in their hands go into what they describe as the office. Two, I've seen them take those folders, go into what the room that is directly adjacent to that room, the office. It's marked as MB Vault. And some of the runners will stay in the MB Vault room for anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. I have observed them go into that room and stay 3 minutes and more time. I've observed them mark on the outside of, on something on the ballot inside the room. Often they close the door, sometimes they do not. I've observed them take pens along with the duplicate ballots into that room. I've observed one person take a duplicate ballot, start out the door that was just to the east, on the east side of the room, just to our right-hand side, and she started to leave the room. I was looking at her. She looked back at me, came directly back inside, and then went on her way from there.
Okay. Now, when you say they have the green folder, do you know whether or not the ballot is in the green folder when they're walking around with the green folder, the runners?
You can see the ballot, both ends of the ballot extending outside of the green folder.
Okay. When you've seen people go into the office with a ballot, after they go into the office, are you able to observe them?
Absolutely not.
When you see them go into the room marked MB Vault, are you able to observe them?
Most, I would say 90% of the time they close the door, but there have been a few occasions where they would leave the door ajar, not completely open.
And that door is it solid?
It is.
So you can't see into the room when the door is closed, is that
There
right?
is no window in that door.
Okay. When is the most recent time that you saw runners take ballots into the office marked private?
Last evening.
What time was that?
Approximately 6:30, 7 o'clock last night.
Okay. And when was the last time that you saw them take the ballots into the room marked MB Vault?
Last night, on my shift from 3:30, 4 o'clock until 7:30. And I will tell you also that I have seen those same runners not even stop at the vault. They go directly from the counting board tables to the area where the duplication tables are supposed to be and don't even stop in the vault. And that was on numerous occasions last night.
Okay, and at that point, they wouldn't have picked up a blank ballot then, right?
I don't know how they could have. I would have no knowledge of that.
That's all the questions I have at this point.
Mr. Devaney.
Very briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Taylor, are you serving as a poll observer for any particular organization?
Yes, sir, for the Trump campaign.
And you said you've been there 4 evenings, is that correct?
That's incorrect. I've been there 3 evenings.
3 evenings, thank you. And have you seen ambassadors while you have been there?
Yes, 3.
And have you ever spoken to an ambassador?
I've spoken to all 3 ambassadors, Robin, Elizabeth, and Michelle.
And have you ever raised concerns with ambassadors relating to the conduct of runners?
My understanding, we were never given the instruction that we could raise a concern. I went back to my campaign, the Trump campaign, and raised those concerns. And being an attorney, I wanted to raise those concerns there first before I went to the ambassadors.
And as you sit here today, you've not raised any concerns with the ambassadors, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect.
Briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Taylor, did anyone ever outline a challenge procedure to you that you could make a challenge?
Of the ambassadors, no.
Did anyone ever invite you to make a challenge?
Of the ambassadors, no.
Did they tell you that there was any other way other than with the ambassadors that you could make a challenge?
No.
No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Mr. Binnall, your next witness.
Thank you, Your
Virginia
Honor.
Stewart, Your Honor.
Will you please raise your right hand and be sworn?
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before this court, truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Binnall.
Good day, ma'am. Can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Virginia Stewart, Virginia Stewart.
And ma'am, how are you employed?
I'm currently employed as a federal background investigation for various agencies.
Okay. And is that for security clearances?
Yes,
Okay. And do you do anything else professionally now?
do you mean employment or other legal related work?
Other legal related work?
Currently, I am a pro tem traffic court judge in California in the Superior Court system where I live. I'm not appointed and I'm not elected, but I serve at the pleasure of the court strictly for traffic court purposes. I do it on a pro bono basis. I do still practice actively as an attorney, and I've done that work for the court system for about 8 years.
Okay. And ma'am, how did you start your legal career?
After law school, I went into the Bureau of the FBI. I was there for a couple years and then decided to practice as a prosecutor. I moved to California from where I was stationed, the field office I was in. And I came out to California and passed the bar and became a prosecuting attorney and worked in 2 different DA's offices.
Okay. What did you do for the FBI?
I worked in white collar crime and did general criminal investigations as needed.
What was your title?
Special agent.
And are you an observer in this election?
Yes.
Yeah. Who are you doing observing work for?
The Trump campaign, the Republican Party.
Okay. Ma'am, have you had an opportunity to observe both at the Trade and the Greystone buildings?
Yes.
And at the Trade building, when were you last there?
Yesterday.
And yesterday when you were there, did you observe in the Agilis room?
Yes.
what are you able to see when you're in the Agilus room?
From the chair that I was sitting in or standing up right by, I'm able to see the Agilus machine. I'm able to see at the other end from where the observer area is, envelopes in USPS boxes that are taken out and put into the large box at the end of the computer, where the envelopes are then slid down through a little trough and then fall into one of 12 different trays. I'm able to see directly across me at anywhere from 6 to 8 stations of people, employees sitting at a computer who are looking at computer screens and looking at the envelopes.
Okay. Are you able to, let me withdraw that. How loud is that room?
Very loud because of the machine.
Are you able to hear what any of the staff are saying in that room?
I've been there twice. On the first time, no. The second time, being yesterday, I could hear employees talking when the machine had stopped working for some reason. Other than that, no.
And are you able to meaningfully observe what they're doing?
I'm meaningfully able to observe the function of putting envelopes in the machine, people taking them out that fall into a certain tray, turn around and put them in a USPS tray, which then other people, primarily men, turn around and put into a cart.
Okay. Do you ever see people operating the machine?
Yes,
Can you hear what they're talking about?
not when it's on.
Okay. And then have you also been in the Freedom room?
Yes,
And how about the Liberty room?
yes.
How many times have you been in those rooms?
Actually, inside in the Liberty room, maybe 5 times, and in the Freedom room, maybe twice.
Do they ever conduct business when you're there?
I've never seen any business being conducted.
Do they ever suggest you should leave when you're there?
One time, yes.
And what happened then?
The ambassador led me in and immediately walked to one of the chairs. There are 3 observer chairs placed in the middle of the room. In the aisle, she walked to the rear one and just sat down. I followed her because that's the first time I was ever given an opportunity to actually walk into the room, in either one of the rooms. I followed her. I sat down in the second chair and just sat down for a second or so before one of the women in the back of the room, on my left side to the back, in the back row, said something to the ambassador, basically implying we're not doing anything and there's really no reason for you to be here. She didn't actually, she just implied that it would be a good idea if we left. I needed to see what the ambassador would do. The ambassador stood up and told me we needed to leave. And I walked out of the room.
Okay. Have you ever seen workers in trade handling ballots?
Yes, the tabulation area.
In the tabulation area?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not the Agilus room. That's a separate part where they're actually tabulating ballots. Is that right?
Yes, at the back of the warehouse by the loading docks.
And have you, what have you seen as far as them, have you ever seen them handle more than one ballot at once?
You mean when they're putting it in the scan?
Have you ever seen anybody walking around with a handful of ballots?
Well, when they get a box in the tabulation room, and I can only see the front tabulation room, there's another room behind it. In the front tabulation room, when the box is delivered to an employee with a scanner, they will open the box and they will take out the ballots and they start making sure they're flat and prepare them and then put them into the scanner.
Okay, thank you. Can we get her exhibit 1, please? Ma'am, in front of you is Exhibit 1 that has already been admitted to evidence. You see that?
Yes,
Okay. The first few pages, let's say, can you take a look at the first 2 pages for me?
yes,
Actually, 3 pages. Can you tell me whether or not that's the observer area in the Agilis room?
yes, it appears to be so.
Okay. And the second picture, that's a picture of the Agilis machine, correct?
Yes,
And the people there standing there, is that consistent with what you've seen for people operating the machine?
yes, more people are actually working it. The 2 women who are standing there looking at the trays are generally the ones putting the envelopes through. But generally, there's more employees there normally.
Okay. And is that third picture, is that another picture of an observer chair in the Agilis room?
Yes,
The next set of pictures, can you review those and let me know if those are consistent with what you've seen in the Liberty or Freedom rooms?
I make a finding that paternity has been established.
Was the potential to introduce children.
We're here for the court's order to show cause.
Okay, so that takes care of one motion.
Maybe Cynthia can tell me what the status is.
Any preliminary issues we need to take care of?
We'll make sure that she's put on house arrest.
As you know, the Supreme Court has
the first picture, they're not numbered.
Yes.
The first one looks like it's the Liberty room. The second looks like the Freedom room, but I'm not positive on that. And the next picture looks like one of the rooms is empty. And the next picture looks like another one of the rooms. I'm not sure which one.
Okay. Is that, are the seats with the red tape around it, are those the observer chairs?
Yes,
And is that where you were sitting when you were asked to leave?
the middle chair.
The middle chair? Thank you. You've observed at Greystone too, is that right?
Yes.
When was the last time you were there?
Actually, yesterday, I've been there 2 times.
Okay. When you're there, have you seen runners handling the ballots with the green folders?
Yes.
Have you ever seen them go into any separate rooms with those ballots?
Well, into the NV vault, which is basically a room, as far as the ones with the ballots. Yes, I've seen those go in to get something in the room.
Do they always leave the door open?
The door will either be closed or slightly ajar.
Okay. Have you ever been able to monitor the duplication process?
No.
Why not?
Well, I was under the impression that the duplicating process was actually being handled out in the open. And the reason this was the first time I was there, I asked one of the ambassadors where the duplicating was going on. And she said, right out here at the tables, and kind of moved her hands in a way to show me that it's all around me. And I said, you mean these tables that I can see? And she said, yes. And I asked her how it actually happened, that they would do the duplicating process. And she said that one person would read off the candidate's name, is the one that had the circle, and the other person would write down on the blank ballot, making it a duplicate. So once she had told me that, I started looking around, because according to her, whichever table had a soiled ballot or something that needed to be duplicated with another ballot, it would go back to that table and the same people would complete it. Based on her information, I started looking around the room, especially to the closest table near me, and it happened to be table 18 that I could actually view. And I noticed at that time, shortly thereafter speaking with her, that one of the green folders with a ballot in it was taken over and someone went in the ballot room. There was also another green folder that came back, and this is why I was a little hesitant in your earlier question, because the green folders will contain duplicate ballots as well as apparently ballots that need to be audited for some reason. And it can be confusing when you're just seeing runners walk back and forth. I saw a green folder come back, and then I must have been diverted looking at something else going on. And I turned back shortly thereafter, and there was one woman at table 18 reading a book, and the other woman was, her back was to me, she was hunched over, and she was kind of circling or writing something. I assumed they must have started the process, but it wasn't being done correctly, based on what I had already been told, that all the duplicating was being done right in front of me. And of course I could observe it at those tables out there. And it turned out, and I realized this shortly after that, when the green folder came back, and apparently that was something that had been duplicated that they requested, and I'm surmising on that. I'm not sure actually about that. With all the files going back and forth, being told that there was duplication, yet not seeing the counting employees actually following procedure, which they were supposed to do, I realized that something else had been going on at the table, and they had just been waiting for something to be duplicated. It was as if there was some type of sleight of hand going on where I was told something, I was expected to see something, but it was not, it didn't happen. I don't want to say I was tricked, but I feel foolish that I believed that it was going on in front of me when it really was something else.
Are you able to
Mr.
see?
Binnall?
Yes.
Excuse me for just a moment. Mr. Devaney, you had unmuted and then muted again. Did you have an objection?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Binnall.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, can you, from the observer area, are you able to see all of the tables at Greystone?
I believe based on markings of tables, there must be 32 because number 32 is right by the door where we go in and out. But when I'm sitting in the observation area, I cannot see all of them. I cannot see around the corner in that L-shaped room to the right. And I definitely cannot see any of the tables in the long walkway over to the observation point.
Okay. Do you ever see runners taking ballots to the areas where you cannot see?
Yes.
No further questions from this witness at this point.
Mr. Zunino?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Stewart, you indicated that you were formerly employed by the FBI or currently, or both?
Well, formerly.
Okay. And so you're currently conducting background checks for the FBI?
No, I said federal, various federal agencies directly, or actually I'll add through a contractor, but several different agencies and not the Bureau, no.
Okay, so you're doing that on contract, then you're not an employee of the federal government?
I'm not an employee of the federal government for anyone I work for.
Okay. Do you think that your experience as an FBI agent causes you to be more suspicious than the average person?
I don't know. Am I more suspicious? That could be attributed to my nature of experience in life. I would think because of my training in the Bureau, I'm much more cautious in many ways. Am I a suspicious person? I would like to think I'm just a very rational person who evaluates as best I can very thoroughly.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, are you aware that there are supervisors in the Greystone building?
Yes, I've been told that, yes.
Are you aware that there are auditors in the Greystone building?
Yes, I've been told that.
Are you aware that the runners may take ballots with problems on them to either the auditors or supervisors?
Yes, I've been told that.
Do you know how many precincts we have in Clark County?
How many what?
Precincts?
No.
Would you be surprised to learn that we have 1,150 precincts?
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
Are you aware that when the runners go into the mail ballot room, they have to find the right precinct, blank ballot?
Look, I would assume so.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Devaney?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Do you have any training in election administration?
No.
Have you ever served before as an observer?
No.
And you said you're affiliated with the Trump campaign, is that correct?
For this purpose, yes.
Is your role with the Trump campaign limited to this observation role that you're playing?
Yes. So far, yes.
And I'm sorry, how many days did you say you've been at the election office as an observer?
2 days at the Greystone building, not full days, of course, partial, and 2 days at Trade Center.
So total of 4 days. How many hours per day?
At the Greystone, it was, I believe, 4 hours total. And at Trade, it's been 8 hours.
8 hours per day or a total of 8 hours?
Total.
So you've been a total of 12 hours observing, is that correct?
Yes.
And before this particular election. Have you ever before served as a poll observer?
Never.
And you mentioned ambassadors. You registered any concerns or objections to ambassadors during the 12 hours you've been functioning as a polls observer?
I never knew that I could. I asked questions, and I asked a lot of questions of those ambassadors. I realized some information was not correct. Therefore, I would ask at a different time a different ambassador to see if I could get at least some type of corroboration. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't.
But in response to my question, is it correct that you've not registered any objection or expressed any concerns to ambassadors?
True. Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Binnall, redirect.
Briefly, Your Honor. Ma'am, has anyone from the registrar's office told you that you could challenge the processes at all?
No.
Have they ever outlined a process for you to execute a challenge?
No.
No further questions.
Mr. Zunino.
Your Honor,
Ms. Miller, go ahead.
just a couple, ma'am. I'm sorry. When you checked in as an observer, were you given information from Mr. Gloria on a piece of paper?
When I signed, when I received 2 documents when I came in order to get access, yes. I had 2 documents.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
There was one.
Doesn't one of those documents indicate that you can ask questions of the ambassadors?
I don't recall offhand without it in front of me, but I.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Zunino.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Just one question. You know, in your dealings with or in your interactions with the election workers and or ambassadors, do you have any reason to believe that they are biased for one presidential candidate or another?
No.
Okay, thank
No
you.
reason.
Mr. Devaney.
Nothing further. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. We're going to take our lunch break now. It'll be an hour, so we will start up at 1:10. Is there any problem with just keeping this open? We're going to keep this open if you want to, not that you have to stay there, but you can keep your connection, or if you want, you can call back a few minutes before 1:10.
Your Honor, could we ask who the next witness is?
Mr. Binnall?
Maria Diaz is going to be our next witness, Your Honor.
Thank you.
We'll be in recess until 1:10.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this is 20 OC 142, Kraus versus Sagavsky. We don't have petitioner's counsel present yet.
Yes, I'm here. This is Barbara Sagavsky.
Who is that?
We're here. Barbara Sagavsky, if you were asking for me, I'm sorry, we just turned you on and just got the virtual picture on.
Wait, it's your camera also. This is what they're saying.
Okay. Are we? Yes.
Yeah.
So Secretary Sagavsky's on with me, Wayne Thorley.
And petitioners are here as well.
And we have counsel for the Secretary of State, for the Registrar, Clark County, and for the Democratic Party. So Mr. Binnall, your next witness.
Your Honor, on the lunch break, we located a document that's relevant to Virginia Stewart's testimony that I would like to introduce. So I'd like to recall Ms. Stewart very briefly. It's been submitted to the court. Ms. Stewart, can you come back?
Ms. Stewart, you are still under oath. Go ahead, Mr. Binnall.
Thank you. Ma'am, I'm going to hire you. I'm going to hand you a document that we will mark as Exhibit 3. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is this a document that you signed?
Yes.
Can you put your information on it?
Yes.
Is this a document that you received from the Clark County Election Department?
Yes.
Okay. And is it things that you agreed to?
Yes.
And item number 4 say, where does it say, I am prohibited from the following activities, and then going down to number 4 says arguing for or against or challenging any decision of the county or city election personnel?
Yes.
Okay, that's all the questions I have from this witness. I move the admission of Exhibit 3.
Has that been provided to the other counsel?
It has, Your Honor, and we've also emailed it to the court just a short time ago.
I was not aware of that. I'm going to see if they have received that. Would you check with Billy to see if you received something?
Documents sent this one and to be updated after an election.
Mr. Zunino, did you get a copy of that?
No, I just received it. I just opened it a second ago.
Ms. Miller, did you receive a copy?
I'm just looking for it. I think I did get an email, Your Honor.
Mr. Devaney?
Just a few minutes ago, Your Honor.
All right. Well, I'll give you all some time to read it. I don't know how long it is. I will. I want to review it as well. So, Mr. Binnall, is it a one-page document?
Yes, sir. It is a one-page document with about, half the page taken up in text. The rest of it is a form for people to handwrite in their information and signature.
Mr. Zunino, have you had a chance to review the letter? Or the document, I guess?
I have, Your Honor.
Mr.
I
Devaney? Did you receive a copy, Mr. Devaney?
Sorry, Your Honor. Still having trouble with the mute button. Yes, I have received a copy and I've reviewed it.
And a chance to review it?
Yes.
Ms. Miller, have you reviewed it?
I have reviewed it. I have sent to the court and to all counsels the second page that is given to observers. And I would like, when it's my turn, appropriate turn, to, if we're going to admit this document, have an opportunity to admit the second page memo to observers. That one of Mr. Hardy witnesses have already testified that they received 2 pages when they check in as an observer.
And something I was informed that something else has just been transmitted, I guess, by email to us. I haven't seen that yet.
And Your Honor, I'm sorry, Miss. Please go ahead. Your Honor, this page it shows our proposed Exhibit 3 says full text included in page 2, and we have the first page of it. We don't have the second page. If they are representing that what they're sending around is the second page of this document, then the rule of completeness, I think, would require that it be included in the exhibit. We have no objection to that. As long as that's what they're representing to the court.
Mr. Zunino, have you received the second page?
No, I have not. It hasn't come in. I received an email from MaryAnn, but there was not an attachment to it.
I'm sorry, it kind of a spaz. I sent out one without an attachment, and please wait for the second attachment.
We've all been there.
Okay.
So does the second page, is it dated October 21, 2020 memo to election observers?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right. Okay. I've also received a, from Mr. Hardy's office, Office of Nevada Secretary of State, 2020 general election turnout updated 10/27/1034. Mr. Zunino, have you received that?
And updated to that other chart.
Pardon me, Your Honor, was that question directed at me?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So did you ask whether I had received a document that was circulated by Mr. Hardy?
I believe it was sent to my judicial assistant from Mr. Hardy's office. It's Office of Nevada Secretary of State 2020 general election turnout updated 10/27/2020, 10:34 a.m. Signature cure information.
I think that was circulated this morning. Is that right, Brian? Is that the one?
Yes. Yes, that was circulated this morning to council. I just resent it all to council and to the court. This is the updated version as of yesterday, which is Exhibit A to the, and we referenced it earlier this morning, that Exhibit A to the intervener's reply. When they filed the reply, they filed it with only what we had updated through last week. This just gives that same information except updated through yesterday. So we have the most current information today.
So I agree, I have that.
And Your Honor, I think the cleanest way for us to do that, since it's coming directly from the Secretary of State, is just move that the court take judicial notice of that document.
Ms. Miller, do you have any objection to that document that we'll mark as number 3 for identification?
I don't have any objection to it, no.
You just need to double check it, kind of cut out in the middle. Did you say no, you do not have an objection?
I don't have an objection. I don't have an objection to you taking judicial notice of it either, whichever way is best for the court.
I think.
Mr. Zunino?
I think so. There's two, I think, issues before us. One is the admission of Exhibit 3, which is the observer acknowledgement form, and the second page, I think, which is a copy of the NAC. And I don't have any objection to the admission of Exhibit 3, provided that we admit pages 1 and 2. And then with respect to the other document, I have no objection if you take judicial notice of that. That's the one that was issued by the Secretary of State regarding signature cure.
So I want to be clear. We have 3 exhibits marked now, correct? Exhibit 1 are the photographs that were attached to Mr. Gloria's affidavit. Number 2, at this point, is the observation of polling place.
Your Honor.
Number two is the Agilus ballot packet. So number 3 is the observation of polling, and number 4 will be the updated signature cure information. So you were correct when you were referring to number 3. Mr. Devaney?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection to the updated cure information?
No objection.
Court will take judicial knowledge of exhibit number 4. Mr. Zunino, did you get the second page of exhibit 3?
No, but that's fine. I know what it is. I'll get it eventually. My email is just slow. I think it's loading. So That's fine. I don't need to see that. I know what it says.
Do you have any objection to the two-page exhibit number 3 for identification?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Devaney, did you get the second page?
I did, Your Honor, and I have no objection.
The exhibit number 3 is admitted. Mr. Zunino, any questions cross for Ms. Stewart?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Devaney?
Your Honor, yes, I do have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Ms. Stewart, is it correct that you received page 2 of Exhibit 3 when you checked in to be a poll observer?
Yes,
Did you take the time to read page 2 of Exhibit 3?
I have read it, yes.
Did you read it when you checked in as a poll observer?
No, I scanned it.
Your Honor, if, I just have a little bit of a concern that she doesn't have the second page in front of her. If we can just take a moment, since she's authenticated the first page, not the second page, I'd just like to make sure that she's seen what she's testifying to.
We'll take a moment.
Mr. Hardy, I take it you have that with you, so you're presenting it to the witness?
Yeah, I have it on, I have the email. I don't have the physical printout right now, Your Honor, but I can show her what came across as the email on my pad, if that's all right.
Ms. Stewart, please let me know when you have finished reading that second page.
I'm finished. Reading the email.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Stewart, you said that you did receive this, but you didn't closely read it. You just scanned it. Is that correct?
That's true.
And so I take it then you were not aware that, as stated here, if you had questions about the processes you're observing or other election-related questions, you could so inform the ambassador that you have questions. You were not aware of that. Is that correct?
No, I was aware of that because I had been told that by ambassadors.
Okay. And were you aware that you also had the opportunity to meet with election officials and ask them questions directly at either approximately 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. daily?
Well, I was aware of it, and there was one occasion when I wanted and requested to ask to the assistant director over at Trade, and I was told she was very busy and they would get back to me.
Did you ever appear at 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. to take advantage of the opportunity to ask election officials questions directly to them?
At that specific time?
Yes.
9? No, I did not appear.
But you were aware you had that opportunity, correct?
I am aware.
But
Because I
you chose not to avail yourself of that opportunity. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I have no further questions.
Any redirect, Mr. Binnall?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Ma'am, does number 4 clearly say that you're not allowed to challenge any decisions?
Yes.
Did you understand that to mean exactly what it said?
Yes.
No further.
Mr. Zunino?
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Devaney?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Miller?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Stewart, thank you. Mr. Binnall, your next witness.
Maria Diaz, Your Honor.
Will you please raise your right hand and be sworn?
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Go
Good
ahead,
morning,
Mr.
ma'am.
Binnall.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, can you please state your full name for the record and spell it, please?
Maria Teresa Diaz, MaryAnn
And Ms. Diaz, what do you do for a living?
I'm a retired medical surgical kidney transplant nurse from UMC and former SCIU Vice President and Executive Board member for UMC.
Okay. And have you been volunteering as a observer for the Trump campaign?
Yes, and for PhilAm also.
I'm sorry, for who?
For Philippine American Group.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And what's that group again?
Filipino American Group.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ms. Diaz, have you been to the trade facility to observe the processing of ballots?
Yes.
And have you been to the Liberty and Freedom Room to observe signature matching?
Yes.
And when you've been there, have there been times when people have actively been engaged in signature matching?
Yes.
Okay, ma'am, can we get her Exhibit 1, please? Okay, ma'am, in front of you is Exhibit 1. If you flip back until you see the page that says Manual Signature Verification Rooms, you let me know?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, will you go to the next page? Ma'am, are there 3 chairs on that page
Yes.
surrounded by red tape?
Yes.
Can you tell me whether or not that's the area where observers are to observe from?
The one with the red line around it in the middle, those 3 chairs, that's where I sat there.
Okay, and how many times have you sat there?
On October 14, I sat there, and then yesterday I sat there for 15 minutes.
Okay, how many times have you been to trade to observe total?
Including yesterday, 6 times.
Okay. When you are there in that room, can you see the employees engaging in signature matching?
Yes.
And what are you able to see when you see them engage in signature matching?
They have 2 signatures on the screen on the left upper hand side. There's 2 signatures that they have to match. And then down below, there's 3, there's accept, and then signature does not match, and there's another one written, and all the way to the right upper hand side, it says save.
Okay, now, can you see all the monitors in that room when you're observing?
No, just the one near me.
Okay, and so when you say that you saw the one near you, could you, did you see any matching activities that concerned you?
Many of the signature that they accept and save on the lady on the 2nd row on my left hand side and the lady on the 3rd on my left hand side. Many of the signatures that I accept and save did not match. And there's one particular that really bothers me. So I asked Sephora, what is the name of that lady?
Who's Sephora?
Sephora is like, she's in charge there. She's like the team leader.
Okay. And what did Sephora tell you?
Sephora told me she cannot tell me the name of the person in that computer, and I'm not allowed to talk to them.
Okay. Why did that signature concern you?
Because you can tell that it's so, the signature on the top is short and the signature at the bottom is longer, much longer.
So the top is skinny and the other one is bigger.
And aside from just the length of the signatures, did the signatures look alike at all?
Definitely not. That's why I said this is just not right. I have
Your
to
Honor,
speak.
sorry, Your Honor, objection, vagueness, ambiguous, look alike at all.
Sorry, repeat that for me.
I'm objecting on grounds of vagueness of the question. The term was, do they look alike at all?
Overruled.
You can continue, ma'am.
The signature did not match. The one on the top is skinny and short, the way it was signed, and the one at the bottom is long and fat, big, the letters. So it just bothers me not to say something. I'm like, I need to know the name of the lady who accepted it, because this is wrong.
And so did you try to challenge it?
I did, but Sephora told me she cannot tell me the name of the person. So I said, well, I need to talk to somebody. So she brought me to Lorena.
And do you know who Lorena is?
Lorena is the assistant of Joe.
And what happened when you talked to Lorena?
Well, she told, I verbalized to her my concern that I've been watching it, and many, many times I've seen that the signature doesn't match and they've been accepting and saving it. And then the last one that really bothers me, I told her, is so obvious that it did not match, but she still accepted it and saved it. And she told me, I'm wrong. The staff have been trained. They know what they're doing. And I insisted to her, I know what I saw and it's wrong. It's not the right signature. It did not match.
And at any point, did anybody tell you that they would process your challenge?
No.
Was all that just from being able to watch one terminal?
Two ladies, the second and the third.
But
And then later on, I watched the one on my right-hand side, Lorenzo, when they're doing the level 2. Because I watched them doing level 1, and then after that, they did level 2.
And so could you, at any point, could you see all the screens in the room?
No. The one on the third, when they're doing the level 2, the lady on the third row on my left-hand side, after she saw me left the room with Sephora to talk to Lorena, when I came back, her computer is tilted more to the seatmate. So there's just no way I can see it. So I have to watch Lorenzo now.
And were there people also seated that were matching behind you too?
Yes, the lady on the second row on the left-hand side moved to the back, the one that I could not see. And then Sephora was sitting there. Sephora gave her chair to that lady from the second row on my left. And then Sephora went to the front and used the computer there.
Okay. And could you see the people that were matching signatures behind you?
No, that really bothers me. No, I could not.
Okay. Could you see the people that were matching signatures in front of you?
Just the one on the left, just Lorenzo, and the other one on my side, no more.
Okay. No further questions.
Ms. Miller?
Ma'am, what training in signature verification have you received?
I was a registered nurse and we used computer in the hospital. And before that, we were doing, the doctors when they're writing orders and when they're signing. That's why I know how to read signatures, because I can tell if this is the signature of so-and-so or not.
So just from your experience in the doctor's office?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Devaney?
I guess, Ms. Diaz, how far away were you sitting when you observed the signatures you've described?
I was sitting here and the lady is here and the next lady is there.
Well, for the record, we're going to need a number of feet. By how many feet were you away?
Hold on. So 1, 2, like 3 feet from the third row, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4.5 feet on the other.
And was there a woman at the computer screen with her back to you?
The one on the second, yes, there. The one on the second, yes.
Okay.
And the one here, her
And
back is not.
She was looking at the screen and her back was to you, is that correct?
Can you repeat that, please?
She was looking at the screen with her back to you, is that correct?
Yes. But what I do when I'm checking her, I move forward like this because they told me I cannot be moving to the next chair. So where I'm sitting, that's it, and I'm not allowed to adjust it, even though I'm the only one there.
Okay. Are you at all familiar with the science of signature forensics?
No,
So you've never studied signature forensics?
no, I'm a registered nurse.
And do you have any knowledge of what standards forensic scientists teach election workers to apply in determining whether a signature matches?
When I see multiple signatures that did not match, I was concerned.
Ms. Diaz, I'm going to ask you to answer the question I asked, which is, are you familiar with the standards that forensic scientists, signature matching, teach election workers?
No,
Do you have familiarity with the fact that a person's signature can vary based on his or her age and when he or she signed the signature for the first time and then again the second time?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Can you answer my question, Ms. Diaz?
You can answer.
no,
And Ms. Diaz, are you familiar with the fact that a signature person may vary based on his or her level of fatigue when they sign something?
the signature that I saw, as a nurse, I've seen my old patients sign when, it's not really smooth. That's not what I saw.
Are you familiar with the fact that one of the standards that applied in signature forensics is whether a person was tired or fatigued at the time of the signature that may cause the signature to vary from a prior one?
Objection that calls for facts, not an evidence, and is calling for an expert testimony, and counsel's essentially testifying at this point.
And I'm not accepting the premise of the question, but the question is she aware? So the objection's overruled. Go ahead, you can answer.
No,
And do you have any familiarity with whether the speed with which someone signs can affect how a signature looks?
my own experience with my signature.
Okay, and have you ever before served as a poll observer in any other election?
No,
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Binnall, redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you. Your next witness?
Anastasia Lawrence, Your Honor.
Thank you.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now coming before this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Binnall?
Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor. Thank you. Now, I just called you as Anastasia Lawrence, but I understand that might not be your legal name. Can you please give us your full legal name and spell for the record, please?
Certainly. Anastasia Ganatsios Lawrence. Anastasia is spelled A-N-A-S-T-A-S-I-A. Ganatsios is spelled G-A-N-A-T-S-I-O-S. Lawrence is spelled L-A-U-R-A-N-C-E.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. And what do you do for a career?
Currently, I work with my husband doing commercial property leasing and management.
All right. And have you received any other certifications or licenses?
I am currently a licensed attorney in the state of California.
Okay. And is your license active?
It is.
Okay. And when you practice law, what kind of law did you practice?
Primarily family law.
All right. Where do you live now?
I currently reside in Fallbrook, California.
Okay. Do you serve as do you volunteer as a poll observer?
Yes.
And who are you serving as a poll observer on behalf of?
The Republicans campaign.
Thank you, ma'am. And have you had an opportunity to be an observer at the trade building?
No, though I did attempt to observe at the trade building.
Okay. When did you attempt to observe at the trade building?
That would be the evening of Monday, October 26th. I was assigned a shift from 7 to 8 p.m.
And what time did you get there?
I arrived at 6:38 p.m.
And what happened when you got there?
When I arrived, I saw, first of all, it was confusing. I wasn't sure where to go, but I eventually figured out what building I was supposed to be at. It was very dark. There wasn't a lot of lighting in the parking lot. So I drove into an area which appeared to be behind the building, and I saw two guards seated speaking with one another. And I was about to ask them where to go, but they waved me on to the front, so I assumed they knew why I was there. So I moved to the front, and I turned right, and I found a parking spot. I sat in my car for a minute or two. It was very dark. I wasn't sure where to go. I was a little apprehensive, but I decided to go out and to explore. I'm assuming that, excuse me, I'm assuming at this point that the building is closed because the lighting in the interior of what appeared to be offices was very, very dim. So I walked out to the front and then walked the length of the building in the front looking for people. As I was returning, a guard appeared. They had been behind a partition. I believe it was a guard. I didn't get their actual title. And the person asked me what I was doing and if I needed help. And I showed them my little observer sign and said that I was here to observe from 7 to 8 p.m. at the Trade Center. And they said, oh, you know what, they're closed. And I said, no, I don't think so. I was assigned to this shift and I know that they're supposed to be open later. And they said, well, and this individual said to me, I will try and get you in. They were very nice, very helpful. So we moved to the front door. And they, this individual started banging on the front door, but we couldn't see anyone inside. So we were just chatting and banging on the door. And then a woman appeared who appeared to be perhaps in her mid-50s, a blonde woman, and she was beyond the partitions inside. So she was some distance from me. And the guard was pointing at me and trying to indicate to that person inside that there's an observer here and she would like to come in. The woman inside looked at me but turned around and left. So another guard, a gentleman, approached and started speaking with the initial guard who took me up to trade. And he just looked at me and said, call your supervisor. You can't go in, call your supervisor. So I placed a call to Shayna Weir, and she was not there, so I left a message. So then I called Shayna's assistant, Dara. And Dara sat on the phone with me while we were trying to gain access to the building. So while we're chatting, a young lady comes into the lobby inside of the building. And she opens the door and chats with the guard who was trying to get me in. And so I'm still on the phone with Dara, mind you. And then the guard said to me, you can go ahead and enter the lobby. And this person, who turns out to be an ambassador named Shayla, said that she would speak with me. It was cold outside, so she let me in. Just to the lobby area. I have not seen, I can't see, further. I don't know what was behind that lobby. And while I'm speaking on the phone with Dara, Shayna called me. Shayna Weir, my supervisor, called. And Dara said, take Shayna on the call. So now I'm on the phone with Shayna, and I am talking to Shayla, who is the ambassador. And I'm asking Shayla, can I please observe? I've been sent here for the 7 to 8 p.m. shift. And Shayla said, we are closed for the day. Our operations have ceased. Shayna instructed me to ask her, is the Agilis machine operating? So I asked Shayla if the Agilis machine was operating, and Shayla responded, no, it had just shut down. So then I put Shayna on speaker so she could hear the responses and our conversation. And Shayna began to ask Shayla a series of questions about the operations within the building and what was happening at this time. And louder? Sorry.
Your Honor, at this time, we're getting into some hearsay, and I'd like to enter an objection to that.
And
for some reason, you're breaking up. You're the only one, but I'm going to have to ask you to repeat it.
I object to the hearsay conversations between Shayna and Shayla.
Mr. Binnall, do you want to respond to that objection?
yes, Your Honor, we're not offering those for the truth of the matter asserted. We're just offering it for the effect on the listener and as context for what happens next, not for whether or not it's true.
The objection's overruled, and I will only consider it for that purpose. Go ahead.
Thank you. So at that point, I was instructed to ask Shayla whether Freedom Room and Liberty Room were operating. Because, and I didn't know this because I hadn't been there, but apparently once the Agilis shuts down, then there's a verification of signatures taking place in Liberty and Freedom. So I was trying to gain access to—
Your Honor, she's indicated that she doesn't know this from her personal knowledge.
On personal knowledge on what?
She said, I didn't know this, but apparently the Freedom and Liberty Room shut down when the Agilis machine is not operating. She doesn't have personal knowledge. She's not qualified.
Sustained.
Okay. We understand. Go ahead.
Does it matter that that's what I learned that night? I didn't mean today that I didn't know that, but in any event. So I would try to gain access to Liberty and Freedom Room and was told that there was nothing going on in there. So there was nothing for me to observe or do that evening. So at that point, I just asked my supervisor, what should I do? And she reluctantly agreed that I would have to go because I was not going to be permitted to go beyond the enclosed lobby area that I was in. I asked for and received Shayla's phone number, and Shayla said that I was able to check with them before I went in for further shifts this week. So I just exited the building, and then I decided to take a look on my own to see what was going on in the building. And I drove my car around to the back, and I chatted briefly with the guards who had told me that they were there for the purpose of receiving drop-off ballots.
Your Honor, objection to hearsay.
Party admission. Your Honor, these are employees of the county. That it would be a party admission, an adopted admission.
Your Honor, there's no foundation to establish that they're employees of the county.
Sustained.
Okay.
All right, and I just drove around the building and was able to observe that the truck bay number 31 was open, so I could see the warehouse. I could also see an officer parked outside of the warehouse opening. I did not see anybody inside of the warehouse. I drove around to the front and I could look in through the windows into the warehouse. Again, I did not observe anyone in the warehouse. So at about 10 after 7, I left.
Okay, and to be clear, did Shayla tell you that they were done working on ballots for the evening?
You know what, the actual phrase "working on ballots" wasn't used.
What
I
word
was just
exactly
told
did she
that
use?
operation ceased for the day, that there was nothing else going on and nothing for me to observe. I asked whether there were other observers there. There were no other observers there.
Okay. Have you also had the opportunity to observe at Greystone?
I have.
Okay, and when you observe it at Greystone, can you see the entire facility?
I cannot.
Are you able to see the duplicators?
I cannot.
And why can't you see the duplicators?
Because the orientation of the area where observers are allowed to sit basically walls us off from the auditors and the duplicators. So I have a limited field of vision, which allows me to see operations from the mail ballot vault, and then 2 offices, and then several tables on one side and several tables on another. And those tables consist of counting board members.
Okay. Your Honor, what I had her to do as a demonstrative is, to save time, is to put on a whiteboard that we have her description of the layout of Greystone. We've had that turned around here in the room with us today so that no one else would be able to refer to it. I would now like to ask her to turn that around and face the camera so that the court and counsel can see it.
And it's demonstrative, you're going to have it marked or try to admit it, is that correct?
At this point, it's just demonstrative. I may try to admit a picture of it afterwards, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You can turn it around.
Yeah. Okay, ma'am, there's a...
Sorry. Okay, closer.
Okay, can everybody see this?
I can see the chart, I cannot read any of it.
Okay, we understand that. And I don't think there's much in the way of writing on it, Your Honor. Ms. Lawrence, can you go ahead and explain to us the layout that you've drawn here of the Greystone facility?
Certainly.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. Your Honor, I can't see anything on that chart. And I have to object. I have no way of verifying what she's saying because I can't see anything.
Well, how about we
I'm not able to see, I misspoke because I thought the exhibit had writing on it. I'm not able to see anything. I can see a couple of lines, vertical lines, and that's it.
Your Honor, how about we go ahead and we take a picture of this and we go ahead and email it around?
We can try that.
Your Honor, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask her a few more questions while we wait for email to make its way through the ether.
Go ahead.
Ma'am, could you see into the room where ballots are stored in Greystone?
No.
Could you see runners going into that room?
Yes.
And would they sometimes close the door?
Sometimes they would close the door.
And would they go in there with the green folder that included ballots?
Yes.
Were you ever able to see the auditor's room at Greystone?
I did ask my ambassador if I could walk slowly by it, and she did allow me to do that. So yes, I was able to look in there as I was walking to the observation area.
And what did you see?
I saw people with boxes counting ballots.
And were you able to then stay and observe any of their work?
No, I was not allowed to remain and linger. No.
Okay. Did anyone ever tell you you could make any challenges?
No one verbally said that to me, but I did ask many questions and present some challenges.
Okay, and what kind of challenges did you present?
Well, I challenged them because I was concerned that I was only able to view a very small portion of the proceedings and activities there. So I asked them if they could put us in a place where we would be able to better view the activities and be provided with a view of the auditing department and the duplicators.
Okay. Now, ma'am, can you show us on this diagram where the observers are sitting?
Certainly. So you enter through here, walk down this corridor, and then to your right, there is a small little area marked by red tape with 3 chairs in it. And we are supposed to remain within this area. We can't step outside of it unless we're accompanied by an ambassador.
Your Honor, sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to register an objection. There's no scale on this diagram, this drawing. It's really a rough sketch. No foundation to demonstrate that this accurately reflects the layout that's being represented. There's no footage that's represented here. It's just a very rudimentary drawing that without a foundation that it accurately represents what it purports to represent.
The foundation objection is sustained.
And Your Honor, I would like to try to lay a foundation here because I believe that Mr. Devaney's objections go to weight and not admissibility. Ma'am, you've been to the Greystone building, is that right?
Correct.
And have you seen how it's laid out?
Yes.
And how many times have you been there?
3 times.
Okay, and are you able to accurately describe the layout in such a way visually as to show us the way it's laid out?
Absolutely.
And is that what you've done on this diagram that you've drawn personally?
Yes.
All right. Ma'am, so again, show us on here where the observers are sitting.
Okay. The observers are sitting at the end, at a 90-degree sort of turn after you enter and walk down the corridor. There's a little recessed area where we are allowed to sit.
Okay. And if we look to the observer's left, are those tables further down?
These tables, there are some tables directly across going all the way to the entrance.
Okay. And are you able to see most of those tables from the observation area?
No, unfortunately, I can see just a little bit, just a few tables to my left.
Okay. And are you able to see the tables to your right?
There are a couple directly in front and then some to the right. So I would say about 3 to 4 are clearly visible.
Okay. And then we see tables further down the direct diagram to the left. Over to your...
To my right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, to your right.
Okay.
Do you see those? Are you able to see those tables?
I'm able to see a couple of them, but this board wasn't able to accommodate what is a much longer corridor that comes back here. So there are quite a few more tables behind this one that are not visible to the observer.
Okay. And then where do the duplicators duplicate from?
So the duplicators are placed out of our line of sight. They're going to be, when you enter, there are duplicator tables to the right as well as to the left, and then extending forward towards where we are. But our line of sight will only bring us to counting board tables. We are not able to view any of the duplicators or any of the auditors.
Okay. And how about, do you know where if there's a room that's marked MB Vault?
I do.
And where's that room?
Okay, so we're here in this little recessed area.
Yep.
Directly across from us is a diagonal wall.
Okay.
And here we have 3 rooms. The MB vault would be the furthest to our left as we're staring at it. And then there are 2 offices here. One of them, the one furthest to our right, that's where our ambassadors would sit with other people. I don't know who they were. And then there was another office to the left of it, and I was told that is the manager's office. I don't know who the manager is.
All right, do you ever see people taking ballots into any of the offices?
I see people taking ballots into the mail ballot vault, and that would be the room furthest to the left.
Okay. Okay, no further questions for this witness.